Once again, welcome back. And here we are with our next session that is a fireside chat on topic, Leave No One Behind, removing stumbling blocks to enable disability inclusion. And to deliver, or rather throw some light on this topic or to have a fireside chat, I would now request Ms. Meenu Bhambhani, Vice President, Head of Corporate Citizenship and Inclusion and Diversity, APAC State Street. Would also request Mr. Prateek Khandelwal, Founder and Managing Director, RampMyCity Foundation, IBTB Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the two who will now take forward from here.
Thank you. In the life of the beloved, Nuvan writes, in my own community with many severely handicapped men and women, the greatest source of suffering is not the inability to speak, walk, or feed oneself, but the accompanying feelings of being useless, worthless, unappreciated, and unloved. We humans can suffer immense deprivations with great steadfastness. But when we sense that we no longer have anything to offer to anyone, we quickly lose our grip on life. My dear friends, we all want to have something to offer. This is how we belong. It is how we feel included. So if we want to include everyone, then we have to help everyone develop their talents and use them for the good of the community. That is what inclusion means. Everyone is a contributor, and all are full members of a community that supports everyone. And on that note, it's my pleasure to open today's fireside chat with Ma'am Meenu Bhambhani and myself, Prateek Khandelwal, where we will talk about certain aspects of disability inclusion. So coming to my first question for Meenu ma'am. Ma'am, good afternoon. I have firstly a pleasure to have this fireside chat with you. I have really read about you a lot, and I've heard you on a couple of forums. You have come across as someone who has a very, very strong disability identity. When I look at people from the world of disability, or including myself, I will accept that a lot of us have lived in denial of our disabilities, or we tend to negate that we have a disability. I am eager to know how and when did this transformation happen in your life, where you started recognizing yourself or identifying yourself as a person with a disability. Over to you, Meenu ma'am.
Good afternoon, Prateek. Thank you, India Diversity Forum, for having me and Prateek here today. Very interesting questions. Prateek, it comes very naturally to me now that I so openly talk about my disability. The other day we were having a conversation in office on a call, and we were all asked to introduce ourselves. And I said, I am so and so. I look after such and such function in the company. And I am an employee with a disability. I am a professional with a disability. I'm also a mother with a disability. I'm a wife with a disability. I'm a sibling with a disability. I'm a daughter-in-law with a disability. So disability is a core part of me. How did this come about? It doesn't come very naturally. It comes after years of struggle. It comes after years of denial, self-denial, self-negation of your own disability. Because, when you're growing up, you don't see too many people with disability around you. So you think the norm is non-disabled world, and that is where you have to adapt. So instead of pushing the system, environment to adapt to your needs and accommodate the difference that you bring, you tend to adapt to that environment. So I continue to adapt because I was not aware. I was in denial of my own self, of my own disability. So I kept denying it in school. I kept denying it in college. I kept denying it in university. It was, for me, the turning point came when I met a lot of people with disabilities after I faced certain discrimination. I felt discriminated. I felt I was denied opportunities because of my disability. And I didn't know who to reach out to. And at that time, I heard about Javed Abidi. I'm talking about late 90s. So I'm quite old, as you can see. And Javed Abidi is also known as the father of self-advocacy movement, disability movement in India. I reached out to him for help, and he helped me connect with right people, and my issue got sorted. And then he wrote a letter to me saying that, we need many young people, educated young people in India who would transform the country, who would not look for help, but would look for solution, who would work in the disability sector, take pride in their own disability, not deny it, and be the champions for the cause of disability inclusion. I'm here in Delhi. I want to transform India, but I need representatives across. So when I met a lot of people with disabilities, I realized, oh my God, I'm not the only one who's educated and disabled, but there are so many like me. And I didn't have to fit in that crowd. It was a non-judgmental, a safe inner space. I could make fun of my own disability. People would make fun of their own disabilities. We would joke about it. And then I realized that, it's the disability community that gives me that confidence to self-identify who I am and take pride in who I am. So from disability identity, it gradually leads to disability pride. For me, pride came much later though. So that's the journey that I went through of denying, negating, and then accepting, embracing, and then proudly self-identifying as a woman with a disability.
That is quite a journey, ma'am, from negating to having pride in the same thing. Talking about disability pride, ma'am, what is disability pride? I mean, from my conversations with people around having a disability, most of us come across or are not proud of having a disability. So could you elaborate on that? What is disability pride?
Disability pride is when you accept that disability is an important part of you, of yourself, of your whole self. It completes you. You are aware of your limitations, and you know that these limitations, you have to live with these limitations. And these limitations will not be limitations if you work towards a solution, work towards creating solutions that will accommodate your limitations. So that is what disability pride is, where you start loving your own self with your disability. I'll give you an example. When I see my photos, when I was studying in college, I used to walk with a stick. In all my photos, my hand is behind me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want the marker of disability to be seen anywhere. And when I had disability pride, I was proud to display my stick. I was proud to be sitting on a wheelchair and wearing it as a badge of honor and pride. It's not that every time I feel proud of my disability. When the system challenges me, I don't consider myself physically challenged. I feel the challenges are in the system and the environment. And it is at that moment that I am unable to take pride in my disability, because the system denies me an inclusive, accessible space to be my whole self, to bring my whole self. So if if I'm on a wheelchair and there are steps and there is no lift or no ramp, or ramp is designed in such a way that excludes me rather than includes me, it's like a rocket launcher than a ramp, I don't feel proud of my disability.
Yeah.
But I feel
That is
very
probably,
proud.
yeah. That is probably why, ma'am, they have coined the word persons with disabilities, because we are persons first, and having a disability, we are persons first. Probably that is why the word has come up. Ma'am, since we are on the topic of disability pride and you have spoken about your work, how has this disability pride influenced your work, and how is it helping individuals or say organizations or corporations?
Uh, you know, um, Prateek, I would say my work in the disability sector started because I started taking pride in disability. I was trained to be a lecturer. I did my PhD in English literature. I started my career as a assistant professor of English, teaching English literature. Disability or working in the disability space was nowhere on the horizon. And when I moved into that journey of disability pride, uh, I realized that that is where I want to make a difference. It's no longer about me. It's not about my own personal disability, but it goes beyond that, where personal starts becoming political. And so this guided my professional journey. I worked with Emphasis for a very long time, which is an IT company. And I was heading CSR. How disability pride influenced that? If you Google about Emphasis, you would find that they have done a lot of work in the space of disability inclusion through the CSR. They have been leaders in disability inclusion space. So whether it's policies, whether it's changing the systems, whether it is piloting solutions like Uber Access, to starting programs like Nanaru Shale, to creating India's first accessible, inclusive museum for people with disabilities, to having Uber Access. These are some of the things that were influenced by disability pride, that everything we do has to be inclusive of disability.
Ma'am, that is a great insight, especially your insights on the private sector, your work with Emphasis. And so, ma'am, what is actually, now since you have worked in this field, what is the status of disability inclusion in the private sector, and what are the steps going forward? What has to be done?
Two things, Prateek. When I look at the status of disability inclusion, some corporations are way ahead when it comes to disability inclusion. Some organizations are still starting their journey, and everyone wants to go through their own journey rather than learning from someone else who has already been there or done that. It becomes a chicken and an egg story for a lot of them, because some people and most of them just think of hiring, recruitment, but beyond that, they think only if you have people with disabilities that you are looking at inclusion. Whereas these things are parallel. You need to have systems, policies, practices in place which include people with disabilities. I have seen a lot of change happening in the last few years. There are many more organizations today which are focusing on disability inclusion. Especially RPWD Act. Ever since RPWD Act 2016, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act has come in, one is seeing more change, but more is required. I think we need more champions in terms of people with disabilities representing themselves. What I'm seeing missing is people with disabilities continue to be represented by someone else. So we need to see more people with disabilities in the leadership roles in the corporate sector. And that is where corporates have to invest more in training, reaching out to more people, and relying on experts is also critical to make sure that your systems and policies are in compliance, not just with the law, but with universal design guidelines, WCAG guidelines for technology. Today, everything is moving work from home in the corporate sector. What is the focus on inclusive technology or accessible technology? Very few are. So that is where I see more needs to be done when it comes to disability inclusion.
Thank you, Meenu ma'am. Somebody who's working in this space, those are great insights, and especially that some people from disability sector need to step up and probably consider there's rather than asking for it, they should make it happen. That is my takeaway from your answer of this. Thank you for your answers, Meenu ma'am.
Thank you, Prateek. And now it's my turn to ask you a few questions. Prateek, I have shared very openly with you about my disability and my journey. I have read a lot about you. You are so young. I read somewhere that you had a spinal cord injury in 2014 when you were 28 years old. How did an acquired disability at that stage in life shape you into finding two accessibility startups, RampMyCity and IBTB?
Ma'am,
it's quite inspiring, to be honest.
Ma'am, actually, it's been quite a journey. So yes, I had a spinal cord injury, and yes, it had its own certain factors that were really mentally stressing for me. But I think one factor that comes with an injury like that is social isolation, that experience. And somebody like me who was very socially active before the injury, suddenly my world changed after the injury. But I always wanted to be a part of the solution, wanting to go out, wanting to be the same myself, meeting people and being in and having a public life. But I saw that I could not go out to anywhere because most of the public places in India are inaccessible. I went to RPWT Act, I went to #AccessibleIndia campaign, I went through articles that people are in courts, there are petitions, there are NGOs, all are doing some work, but still I was not able to access places near me, and I did not know how to go about it. And I think that is when I decided to be a part of the solution and started my first startup, that is RampMyCity, which was a simple accessibility appeal to restaurants. So I was a big foodie. So when I wanted to go out to eat, I raised a request to restaurant owners who have chains of restaurants to get their restaurants ramped. When these restaurants started getting ramped, I said, wow, this is easy. So when they started getting ramped, I realized that they were not having proper ramps. They were not proper designed ramps. So I said, okay, fine. If they do not have properly designed, and I will give them ramps. So that is when I started having my own architect, own vendors, own design solutions, which can give them, which can have, so that the restaurant can have a proper design ramp. Now, when I started going to these restaurants, having a proper ramp, I realized that now the restaurant staff needs training, because I still need somebody to take out my wheelchair, to take me over the ramp, to give me a proper table, to have, so that I can also make use of the washroom, and all these things the restaurant staff need to get trained in. And so instead of going on social media and blaming people, I started training people. So that is when I tried training people, and my idea was to empower people, to tell them that that one good day and one good hour in a person who's out there in public, who's usually invisible, you are actually changing somebody's life, because now he can get to have a meal in public with his family and friends, just like anybody else. And that is the world that we should try to create. Now, when this started happening, I realized that ramps are just the starting of the building. You need so much more inside the building. Like just as you mentioned, in workplaces, you require, even if you are you have used the ramp, you require an automatic door. You need proper cubicle depths. You need an accessible cafeteria, washrooms, conference halls, and all these parking bays and all these things. So where does these solutions come from? Because in India, accessibility is thought of as a big bang idea. where you need to bring down a building or break the wall. And I think I was not in for that. I thought if you have to inculcate accessibility in our systems, it has to become affordable. And that is when I started IBTB, which started giving affordable solutions to private sector, where you can give add-ons to your existing buildings and make them accessible to people having a disability. So that was my journey of forming RampMyCity and IBTB.
Wonderful, wonderful. I myself use the word inspiring because for you, but anybody who's an entrepreneur, I just find them very inspiring. Not that one will necessarily jump into the entrepreneurial journey, but it's quite amazing what you're doing. Prateek, I'm sure a lot of people have told you that you are very inspirational, right? And a lot of people with disabilities are objectified as an inspiration, sometimes just because of the disability. What is your take on that? How have you handled that?
So, ma'am, this actually, thank you for asking me this question. Actually, this takes me back to an incident where it was a weekend, and me being me, I'm always wanting to be social. I went out to have a couple of beers with my friends at a local pub, and had a couple of beers, and it was Saturday night. People were dancing, so I started dancing, and I started dancing in my wheelchair, and it was nothing very extraordinary I was doing in my head. And that is when these couple of gentlemen stepped up and they came to me and they said, that, sir, you are an inspiration. And I looked at myself and I said, sir, everybody is dancing and even you are an inspiration. But they pointed at my wheelchair categorically and said, no, you are an inspiration. And that really ticked in my head. And I said, why is dancing on a wheelchair such an inspiration? That is when, ma'am, I actually dig deep into it. So inspiration is something, somebody you admire, inspiration, somebody you admire or want to be like. And I thought that the problem is that people have very low expectations from a person having a disability. And if they were to swap positions with them, they think that they will probably not be able to do these things which these people are doing. So that is when, ma'am, I thought that this really needs to be addressed. So my appeal to everybody who calls people inspiring, rather than calling them inspirational and or saying more power to you and we love your spirit, you can आप उनसे और भी बातें कर सकते हैं. कभी आप किसी person with disability से मिलें तो उनसे पूछें, मौसम का मिजाज पूछें, खाने में क्या पसंद है पूछें, चाय पीते हैं या कॉफी पूछें, उनकी हॉबीज क्या है पूछें, हाल ये दिल पूछिए, देश का हाल पूछिए, मोदी, बाइडेन, इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, चाइना, यूएसए की बात पूछिए, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग की बात पूछिए, स्टेट ऑफ इकोनॉमी की बात पूछिए, पोल्यूशन, पॉपुलेशन और उनके आने वाली जिंदगी के आगे क्या प्लान्स हैं उसकी बात पूछिए. और हाँ, जाते जाते ये जरूर पूछिए कि अगली बार वो आपसे कब मिलेंगे. क्योंकि मेरे दोस्तों, यही सारी बातें तो आप किसी आम इंसान से करते हैं और हम भी तो वही हैं, एक आम इंसान. बॉडी में डिसेबिलिटी होना एक अलग बात है, लेकिन अगर एक इंसान को इंसान की तरह ही नहीं ट्रीट कर पाएगा तो इससे बड़ी डिसेबिलिटी क्या ही होगी. Isn't your inability to see another human being as a human being your biggest disability? That is about inspiration, ma'am.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, in fact, I wanted to ask you one more question, but I think you have already given me an answer through your second answer to the second question, that looking at people with disabilities as individuals first and human beings first is the biggest mental barrier that non-disabled people have, and they don't see them as that, and hence this divide keeps happening. I know we have run out of time. It has been very interesting talking to you, Prateek. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. And thank you, India Diversity Forum. Do you want us to open it for Q&A, or I do not know whether we have time for that?
So, ma'am, we will definitely have the questions passed on to you offline. But with that said, just like how Mr. Khandelwal said that, बताइए मिलेंगे कब फिर? So that is something that we would definitely want to meet you again, the two of you for sure, because it was quite an interesting conversation. In fact, a very brilliant conversation about being an inspiration for each other and normalizing the entire topic, right? So thank you so much once again. It was brilliant having you here.